Okay, perfect. So yeah, like I said, my name is Aaliyah. I'm one of the ESG grant managers, and today we'll be discussing pay requests, and I'll provide guidance on submitting your pay request through Neighborly. But just to get started, if every name and the organization in the chat box, that would be great. I really like to keep track of who we have in attendance. And then also be sure to use the chat box function to ask any questions, or if something happens to come up after the presentation, feel free to send myself an email, or you can reach out directly to your grant manager. We'd always be happy to assist you. And as always, as you all just saw, this office hours is being recorded and it will be saved on the ESG website. For today's agenda, I will be providing an overview on the funding timelines. We'll do a review on a cover sheet, and then I want to go over how to find really useful information related to ESG, and then I have a couple of reminders at the end. And then we'll have time for a general Q&A as well. So for funding timelines, the official execution date of your grant can be found on the second page of your grant agreement. This date is reflective of the date that the state controller signed your grant agreement. And typically after this date, costs can begin being incurred. But due to the significant delays that you all experience in the execution of ESG 22 grants, it says 23 here, it should say 22. My apologies about that. All grantees have been granted pre-agreement costs starting April 1st, 2023. And so this is for all ESG 22 grants. I want to make that clear too. And all grant funds need to be expended by March 31st, 2024. And grantees will be given 30 days after the 31st of March to submit any final pay requests into Neighborly. But after this date, any remaining funds that are left in your Neighborly account will be deobligated. Okay, and then now we'll go over a couple of, I want to give you all some pay request guidance. So our internal policy requires that all of our pay requests must be submitted within, must be processed within 45 days of submission. And this is assuming that the pay request that's been submitted is complete and accurate. There's no errors on there. But resubmissions require a new start date, which will restart that 45-day window. So when submitting any pay requests, make sure that you include the ESG provided cover sheet, documentation that reflects proof of service, and documentation that provides proof of payment. Any excess documentation will really just prolong the review process and is not necessary. So just please make sure to only include that documentation that is required, which again is proof of service and proof of payment. After the pay requests have been approved by the internal DOH team, which is our accounting and budgeting team, the funds will be released EFT or either a mail check, depending on what your agency has been signed up for. Okay. So just to ensure that pay requests are being processed in an efficient and effective way, you're required to include a cover sheet with all pay request submissions. This is the most efficient way for us to really get your pay requests processed. So this is a cover sheet, which is very similar to the review sheet that us as grant managers use. And this is, there's the website. If you go to the ESG website, it also lists a couple other templates and examples that can be used. However, I would recommend all grantees use this particular sheet as their cover sheet as the most efficient version. So in the top column right here, you would list your organization's name right here. I just put ESG 23, but you would list your actual organization's name right there. And then you would put the funding source. So the funding source for you all could be either ESG, or it could be CDBG, or it could be HSP. Again, this is just an example. I put Proposition 123, which is not an actual funding source available to ESG 22 right now, but this is just being used as an example. You can enter the draw ID, which can be found on Neighborly, and then the execution, grant, and expiration date, which can also be found on your grant agreement, and it can also be found in Neighborly. So next, you would complete the request overview section by entering the different components your organization has been awarded based on the line items that are listed under the budget section in Neighborly. So I'm referring to this section right now. After that, you'll list each expense in its proper category. So if you were funded for emergency shelter operations and you have a utility bill, you would then emergency shelter here, you would list your utility bill right here, the service provider, and then you would also list your proof of payment and proof of service type. For a utility bill, the proof of service would be an invoice. So you would simply input the words invoice right under proof of service. And proof of payment, it can be a credit card statement, a check, an auto pay statement, or any type of receipt or bank statement really will qualify for proof of payment. But be sure to also include the proof of payment and proof of service documentation to also reflect this with the pay request. This should be uploaded along with the cover sheet. Otherwise, the pay request will be rejected and you'll be asked to resubmit it with the attached required documentation. So not only does it need to be stated here, but the documentation needs to be provided that reflects that. Okay. So as mentioned, I wanted to provide some more support as well and reminders for current grantees and some tips for new grantees on how to find ESG related materials. All of these links will be accessible to you as well once this PowerPoint is uploaded. So tip number one, I'd say look through your grant agreement. Most of the information you'll need can be found directly in your grant agreement. So this should be like the really first place that you look for any information regarding your ESG grant. Tip number two, I would say check out the ESG website. There's a ton of resources and information on there that can help you navigate your grant. And we update this website pretty frequently with new information and resources. So make sure you're checking out the website really pretty regularly. My third tip would be to explore the ESG regulation website. This is something I myself use many times when I'm approving pay requests and have questions about an expenses eligibility. And sometimes the regulations are not as clear as we would hope for them to be, but this is still a great resource to refer to, especially with questions regarding eligibility for cost incurred. And like I mentioned, all the links will be accessible in the slide deck and uploaded directly to the DOH ESG website after this office hours. And you may not be able to find your exact answer through any of these resources, but all of these are really great starting places for you to look at. So another tip I'd suggest is utilizing the HUD webpage, which has a ton of resources, but is also not the most user-friendly website, but I would still encourage you all to check it out. You may be able to find answers to your questions on there as well. And one pro tip I have is Google. Google is great. Google a question. If you start the question off with ESG HUD included in that, then that can help when the HUD exchange is not as easy to navigate as you might hope for it to be, but Google really is the best. Another tool that I use frequently too. I like to call it Google University. But always feel free as well to reach out to your grant manager, even if you've reviewed these resources and you want to double check something. That's definitely what we're here for. And we know that ESG regulations can oftentimes be pretty dense, and there's a lot that goes into managing and running these programs. So definitely utilize your grant manager for further support. But we just want to make sure you have tools that you need to try to find answers or helpful information pretty quickly, but also understand that there's some things that you may need help with. So we're here for that. We always prefer to answer a question up front rather than later on down the road once we realize that something may not be right. So do not hesitate to reach out to us. And then I have a couple of helpful reminders. So award decisions for ESG 23, they will be made by December 1st. Well, actually, they have been made. You should have received some communication from Whitney, the program manager, and then you will receive a follow-up email from your grant manager with your actual award amount and the components that you've been approved for. You should get that information by this Friday by 5 p.m. So if you do not receive any of that, please reach out directly to Whitney and she can get you more information on that. Another reminder is your CAPERS. Please be sure to upload your CAPERS report as a PDF file only. If you're having issues with this, please reach out to your grant manager and we'd be happy to help you with this. But it's really important that it's uploaded as a PDF file and that it's your actual CAPERS report that you are submitting as well. So always double check that. And then also be sure that you are submitting at least one pay request per quarter. This is a requirement. So if you're not at least submitting one pay request per quarter, this can trigger a monitoring to take place for your organization, so we can better understand why pay requests are not being submitted within the required time frame. So make sure you are for sure abiding by that. And then also there will be no office hours for the month of December, but we will resume in January. So happy holidays to everyone. I wanted to make sure we got through that, and I respected everyone's time since I had such a late start. It was a really short one today anyways, but it's 9:25 on my end. Does anyone have any questions today? It sounds like someone raised their hand. I can't see you, but go ahead and unmute yourself, and I'm happy to answer your question.
Oh, Aaliyah, this is Holly. There was just a comment from Casey in the chat that the pay request cover sheet that you actually presented is not in on our website yet. And so we just wanted to let folks that we are in process of updating all those links. And you can reach out to your grant manager for that if you would like. But you'll see lots of other examples in the toolbox. And we have really refined it to this new sheet that Aaliyah presented. But we are in the queue to have our website updated. But we can be sure to send that out to all participants as well.
Yes, for sure. Reach out to your grant manager. And there are other cover sheets on there too that are just as helpful, but make sure you are submitting a cover sheet when you submit your pay request for sure. Was there any additional questions or concerns? No, awesome. Well, thank you all for your time. Again, I apologize for the technical difficulties in my late start, but I hope everyone has a great rest of your day. Kat and Holly, if you guys would mind staying on real quickly.
Yeah, no problem.